was a most unusual story, exploding from the most unusual of times in the 7,000 islands of the Philippine archipelago. It began on the tarmac of the Manila International Airport with the murder of Benigno S. Aquino Jr. as he returned from political exile on August 21, 1983. Many Filipinos had hoped that Aquino would someday end the 20-year conjugal dictatorship of Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos, 12 of those years under the brutality and slavery of martial law. With Aquino's murder, a cowering, silenced Filipino spirit broke free in a flood of tears, demanding justice. Justice for Aquino. Justice for all. It would take 2 years of violent national and spiritual crisis for an investigation by the Marcos government to hand down a verdict on the prime suspects, 26 military men and 1 civilian, led by Armed Forces Chief of Staff Fabian Per.
The court finds all accused innocent of the crimes charged with the 2 informations, and accordingly they incur neither criminal nor civil liability. The release of the accused who are under the custody of the commanding officer is hereby ordered.
About 3 hours after his acquittal, General Ver was reinstated by President Marcos as AFP Chief of Staff.
General Ver reported to the President, his Commander-in-Chief, at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Ver submitted a letter requesting that he be allowed to resume his duties following his acquittal in the Aquino Galman murder case.
I would think that the proceedings that had just been terminated was a case where the government was the one on trial. It's not a case of who was innocent and who was guilty. But a far larger picture has emerged, and that is the government on trial. The responsibility as to who killed Ninoy is incidental to the question of whether the government could stand or fall. That the government, the entire judicial system, could not rule otherwise but to absolve the military, because if there was a conviction, therefore this government must fall.
Filipinos at home were one with Filipinos abroad in rejecting this verdict. Aquino's widow would express their sentiment.
Although I am convinced that misguided elements in the military had a direct hand in the assassination of Ninoy, I am not prepared to condemn all 13,000 officers and the entire military establishment for a heinous crime committed by a handful of Mr. Marcos's most loyal henchmen.
The moment of truth had come for the Marcos regime and its prime supporter, the United States of America.
For 20 years, he's been our man in Manila. Because he's been such a staunch ally as well as strong ruler, the United States usually looked the other way as Marcos stifled dissent, and as evidence unfolded showing the Marcos family and their friends were getting rich at the country's expense. But developments indicate that our man in Manila may not be there for long. Recent reports by 2 U.S. intelligence agencies say a once small communist guerrilla movement is now not so small, and that the Marcos regime is in danger of being toppled, which would threaten our 2 military bases there. President Reagan is so concerned that earlier this week he sent his closest political ally, Senator Paul Laxalt, to meet with President Marcos and urge him to make reforms, both for his good and ours.
In answer to their request, I announce that I am ready to call a snap election, perhaps earlier than 8 months.
Years of horror, anger, and unrest came to center on the frail figure of Corazon Cory Aquino. Few Filipinos had ever seen or heard of her before her husband's assassination. 2 years and 5 months later, in the same church where the last rites for her husband were celebrated, Cory received over 1 million signatures of Filipinos asking her to contest Marcos for the presidency. It was the first popular draft for the highest post in the land. A clear signal to an unwilling candidate that only she, who had no ambitions of her own, could lead a divided opposition. Joaquin Chino Roses led the signature campaign for Cory. He had once been publisher of the most powerful Philippine newspaper before martial law. Since the assassination, he was only one among thousands demanding justice, but receiving brutality in the streets.
Going around and talking with people, without my asking them specifically, they always mention the name of Cory, that she most likely would be the person who could unite the opposition.
Time would prove Roses right.
I hereby affirm my candidacy and confirm my willingness, if elected, to serve our people as President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Support for this candidacy was spontaneous and electric, marred only by a dilemma posed by Salvador Laurel. A former senator, Laurel had nurtured presidential ambitions for many years. Till the eve of the deadline for filing candidacies, Laurel struggled with his desire and the knowledge that two candidates against Marcos meant a divided vote and defeat for both.
I hereby officially present to you and proclaim the candidates of the opposition, President Cory Aquino.
Jubilation was upon the streets. Crowds slowly grew to the same volume that had mourned the fallen Ninoy.
Ito ang tunay na diwa ng isang bagong demokrasya. Sa kasaysayan ng Pangulo ng Pilipinas, si Ginoong Marcos lamang nagkaroon ng salvaging sa Metro Manila. Maraming mga estudyante ang pinatay na walang katarungan. Nagkaroon ng Battle of Menjola at nagkaroon po ng Top Avenue. Nagkaroon ng Tatalon sa Quezon City.
Hindi ko ginugusto na manalo si Marcos.
Bakit naman po?
Kasi si Marcos, isang diktador. Ito taasan ko sinasabi. Pinapahirapan ng bayan. Katulad naming maliliit dito, mga squatter.
Ang bansa natin masyadong naghihirap. Sobra na, tama na, palitan na.
Bakit na pili namin na si Cory Aquino? Una-una sapagkat naniniwala kami na siya ay ang kandidato na maaaring pagbigyan ng tiwala, na aming pagtitiwala upang magkaroon kami ng mabuting kinabukasan.
The youth were infected with a rising nationwide fever. For the elders, the snap election gave hope for the first real exercise of the right of suffrage in 17 long years. For the children called martial law babies, the campaign was their first glimpse of a land where Marcos was not virtual king. It was harvest time for enthusiastic patriotism, all walks of life giving time, talent, and treasure in many different forms.
Tingnan mo yung tsura namin, ang itim-itim na namin. Tingnan mo figura ko. Hindi ganito abutin ng mga tsura namin dito. Parang kaming kawawang-kawawa dito sa bangketa dahil lang kay Cory.
If youth buoyed up the Aquino campaign, so did volunteer power. The Aquino campaign saw the rise of volunteer power in Philippine society marked by the visible participation of the very rich. The women of the Philippines had a special role in this campaign for the first woman candidate for the presidency.
I can't see, how we can fail because you've got this, the energy of these women just oozing from all parts of the country, and I'm convinced that it's also because Cory has symbolized, for the women of this country, I guess that hope for a change, the hope that the 20 years that we've known under this dictatorship has finally, is finally coming to an end.
This was also the first time the Filipino people, instead of receiving, gave money for a political campaign.
Sometimes we got 50,000 in one day, and at the cockpit, for example, just in 20 minutes, we were able to get 15,000 pesos.
Not all were enthusiastic about these elections. Departing from the popular mood, the Philippine left had some dire warnings for the electorate. Boycott rallies in the cities ran parallel to marches in the countryside.
We have assumed the position of boycott because we feel that it is an absolutely meaningless presidential snap election. We should go back to the basic issues facing the people, like militarization, like the anti-nuclear issue, like this grinding poverty of our people, like the rising unemployment, like the U.S. military bases in Clark Air Base and Subic Bay. I think these are the fundamental issues confronting the Filipino people.
The Philippine left was not alone in these fears.
The U.S. government, wanting to support the Marcos dictatorship, therefore needed something to convince the American people that it was a democracy. And you can see already the Reagan administration saying before the election that if there's a credible election, if there's a government supported by the people, we will increase our military aid and our economic aid and aim toward the day when we can invest new hundreds of millions of dollars in permanent facilities at Subic and Clark, which is what they called the elections for in the first place.
It would be so strange that they would be that interested in Philippine elections. It would seem as if it were their election. I don't know. What they're saying is that they're here to observe and to report on how clean and how fair and how orderly the elections would be. I wonder how valid the information which they will later on disseminate to the rest of the world. I wonder how valid the information they would get would be, because if they're coming in only now, and even if they came in, let's say, a month ago, well, there is so much intricacy in this thing of fraud in Philippine elections.
The powerful status quo was always there to remind everyone of the resources at its command. It was not only a battle between KBL machinery and Unido Network, it was also a struggle between things as they stood and things as they could be. The communist insurgency had been the Marcos excuse for thorough militarization of Philippine society. Now, there was a frantic attempt to link Cory Aquino to the communists.
The way these opponents of mine are conducting themselves, the first thing that they will do if they ever win is they will deprive you of the right to choose. Why? Because that is the way the communists run a government.
Meron tayong hinaharap na kutunggali na nais niyang paltan ang ating lipunan nang hindi makadiyos sapagkat ang sabi niya ay will abrogate the bases dito sa Pilipinas. At tapos ano mangyayari, mga kababayan? Makakabukas ang ating mga pinto sa komunismo, at pagkatapos ang sabi niya, ililegalize daw niya ang komunismo dito. Mga kababayan, ito ay panganib para sa ating lipunan.
There was also an attempt to play on her lack of political experience.
Hindi kailanman humawak ng anuman tungkulin sa bayan. Kahit chairman man lamang ng kabataang barangay. Paano ka naman makakagawa ng pagbabago sa bayan? Ang isang walang karanasan at walang alam sa pagpapalakad ng gobyerno.
Ako po'y babae. Natural lang na may pusong babae. Isip babae. Disposisyong babae. Tatapatin ko po kayo. Hindi ko ito magagampanan.
Bakit natin kinakailangan iboto ang wala pang karanasan? Sapagkat itong may karanasan na nga, matalino na nga ang tao, kumikrisis ang Pilipinas. Yung pakayang tao na walang karanasan, paano niya maipapangako na ang Pilipinas kanyang may pagsasanggalan? Sa ano pa mang gustong pumasok sa Pilipinas, siya'y babae, malambot ang babae.
Kailan ka magigising o luslimin at tanggapin ang totoo? Huwag ka nang magbubulag-bulagan pa, hindi na siya magbabago. Ginagawa kanyang laruan, pinapaikot-ikot ang iyong ulo.
The opposition was asking the Filipino people to see through their own long-held fears and to break the habit of hoping that somehow Marcos could still change if given a chance. The awful reality about these elections was a formidable state machinery geared for systematic fraud and violence.
The law itself, which is supposed to safeguard the sanctity of the ballot or to make the elections an expression of popular will, the laws that are supposed to do this are themselves manipulated.
Opposition materials were given airtime only on the last days of the campaign period.
When we took these commercials to Broadcast City, which houses channels 9, 13, and 2, I think, we were told that we had to go to the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board. And we argued that during election time, it is the COMELEC which has jurisdiction over campaign material, and nowhere in the election code does it say that TV commercials have to be censored.
We know that this election has already been rigged to the point that the system for a massive fraud has already been established long before election. As a head of a national teacher organization, we know this for a fact because our teachers are reporting how they have been massively bribed to perpetuate and to put in place the system for this massive fraud for the coming election.
It is important that the political parties change themselves here. Kailangan lagyan ng lubid at talagang talin. Why? Sapagat usually may handang ng ballot box exactly the same with all the electoral returns. It only takes 2 minutes for that each to switch the each.
What they're saying is they should not be involved in the quick count itself, that they should report yes, that they should get involved no. That's all. It's not very simple. Because media has no business getting involved in a quick count. Their function is to report the quick count, but never to get involved in the quick count. We are now told that it is not yet final. But it turns out it is in a resolution dated January 17 or a week ago. Now we are being hoodwinked. What are you being hoodwinked about? Be more careful. We have been told that there is no such thing yet. What is no such law already says that there will be an advanced tabulation of election results?
No, sir.
No, sir. The system of bringing that about has not yet been determined. Why are you so insistent and twisting the facts?
I'm not twisting the facts, sir. It just so happens that there is a resolution in black and white, and the chairman said that there is a proposed. So I'm asking now, if there is a proposal, why is it that the bulletin keeps on publishing here that there is a quick count?
On December 24, when NOMPREL was finally accredited, we manifested before the Commission on Election that we will do a quick count, and they had no objection. We agreed with the Commission on Election about a month ago that we would like to do accept that invitation for a joint COMELEC NAMPREL quick count. The following day, they changed their mind, and they said, no, we don't want, let's do it two separate ways.
As passions flamed in this unprecedented campaign, a spirit of vigilance and determination was being nourished in fastings, prayer rallies, and vigils for a fair election. In a crucial hour, the princes of the Catholic Church were never more visible as shepherds of their flock.
Amidst the uncertain shadows cast by our national crisis, let us share with one another our trust and sincerity. Let us break our pride and share our love for one another, for the presence of Christ to enter the hearts of the men and women responsible for protecting our democratic processes in the coming elections.
The struggle was between a 20-year-old martial law machinery and a people's discontent.
This time, this year, for this election, I think many are quiet, silent, but they will vote according to their conscience when they go to the precinct poll.
Besides 500,000 NAMPREL volunteers, there was the Operacion Laban sa Mandaraya network from all levels of society. Just how united this opposition could be was proven at its formidable meeting de avance, or final salvo, on the eve of the elections. It was joyous but determined, as it called for help from the highest. In a manner uniquely Filipino, a political campaign had become a religious festival.
At kung mamaratatin po ninyo, nais kong kumanta ng Ama Namin, sabayan po ninyo ako. Ama namin, sumasalangit ka, sambahin ang ngalan mo, mapasamin ang kaharian mo, sundin ang loob mo, dito sa lupa para ng salangit.
Early in the morning of February 7, it was obvious that the ruling party did not intend to honor the law.
These are supposed to be illegal in the sense na there is a provision that 30 meters away from the polling places wala na hong pwedeng, i-display ng mga campaign materials. So kami, we are residents of Bliss, apart from being an NAMPREL volunteer, we tried, a group of us, started to clean up the place yesterday. Kaya lang nagagalit yung somebody from KBL kasi daw mayroon na silang operation linis. Wala namang ginawa. When we came here early at 6 o'clock, hindi pa rin naman nalinis. Kaya kami na lang ang gumawa. But this is all illegal
The people had taken pains to frustrate traditional cheating devices, but there was a problem they did not expect. Voters' lists scrambled massively, disenfranchised more than 3 million voters in opposition bailiwicks nationwide.
We are not listed. There are plenty upstairs are looking for their names. I have all my ID here, but they won't let me vote.
We have been voting here ever since. Now my mother and me, our names were not listed here. We cannot vote, and we show this as an evidence that we have been voting here. But since 7 o'clock this morning we were here, but then our names were not here.
NAMPREL became the word of the hour in the ensuing anger and confusion as reports of violence and terrorism multiplied. This is one such incident. Suddenly, the orderly conduct of the elections was shattered by armed men who attacked the polling places.
anymore after one grabbed the other one and the other one grabbed the other one. And so we all entered the precincts and locked the door, but we could hear the fighting and the noise. And so we were afraid they could open this door, so we went to the veranda, so we did not see anymore. But all the while they could open the door and tackle everything. But at least in our precinct, we were able to save our ballot boxes.
What's that box? Okay. Okay, come on. Okay, come on. I will get it.
Ang padlak nito. He was speaking.
What happened to that? Napukpok siya eh. Meron nga pumasok bigla eh. Somebody whacked him on the head.
It was more of the same in the countryside, like Tarlac province, home of the warlord and presidential crony Eduardo Cojuangco.
I expect the situation to get worse because they are picking and closing all the ballots already and already filling up the tally seats. And in those places which were left peaceful by me, I heard that they would go there, and so I am preparing to go to all those places. They would like to have the inhabitants, the voters, vote openly in the presence of the captain. The first hours are generally peaceful. It is only when they found out that the people were voting massively for Cory that they started to make trouble.
From start to finish, it was the silent might of a united people against the arrogance of duplicity and firepower. The Filipino people had taken their votes seriously, daring the state to frustrate their will.
Akapin niya, baka mawala yung balota.
This particular scene would repeat itself throughout the country, even if guns often decided the contest, like what happened to the former governor of Antique province. In many places, the canvassing of returns was subjected to suspicious and unexplained delay, but the Filipino people were ready to camp out. As polling places closed and early returns came in, the NAMFREL headquarters became the nerve center for feedback to the people's gigantic effort to express their true will. Two separate pictures would emerge from the NAMFREL tally boards and those of the government's Commission on Elections. Where NAMFREL showed Aquino and Laurel way ahead, the COMELEC, despite its high technology, would show the opposite. The media manipulation that had bedeviled 13 years of martial law and the whole electoral campaign would now be the crucial pawn in the battle for credibility. Passions would be fanned by the immediate statements of the leading contenders.
Of the massive fraud and intimidation, I am still leading. So I also said I can be magnanimous in victory.
We have won by about 2 million, and they claim that they have won without any figures.
I'm just waiting for Mr. Matthews to concede.
That is the most impossible thing that you can do.
Well, it is very evident to me that I'm being cheated out of an election. I do not accept anybody's proclamation.
Well, you don't run for president and then say, these are my figures. I stand by them, and if anything conflicts with them, I don't agree with it. I'll cause trouble. I will not follow the constitutional process.
The conflict would be set to flame by a supposed dialogue between NAMFREL and COMELEC officials on the government television station.
I personally was not in favor of a quick count or a tabulation by any private organization, because I always insisted as member of the commission that the tabulation of advanced election results is purely and solely the prerogative of the Commission on Elections.
In most instances,
the election registrar was not available at the office and therefore was not available to verify the precinct tally sheet.
That is not true. They were in their offices.
They were performing their duties, but they were not in the place where the verification had been previously.
They could not authenticate because you did not submit this precinct tally form to this election registrar. We asked these registrars.
Both of you two gentlemen have...
Teachers in Quezon City
It's unfair to this registrar to be charged.
During this last hour, I have been witnessing the quarrel of the body with its arm.
AMFREL is an elitist organization. We'll get to the... believes it's an extra-legal and supra-constitutional body. They believe, you know, that they should be able to dictate to the people of this country what the people of this country should believe about our elections. Mr. Concepcion said that NAMFREL is not elitist. Mr. Concepcion, meron ba kayong mangsasaka sa inyong board of directors ng NAMFREL? Meron?
Alam po ninyo, napakarami ng ating mga sumasama sa NAMFREL
sa board of directors
ay naghihirap
ko sa mga the ones who lead
ang liderato po ng mga labor unions ay kasama namin. Ang liderato po ng mga national organizations at ang mga kasama
meron
po nila.
Meron ba kayong mangingisda sa inyong board of directors ng NAMFREL? Wala ho, kundi puro kayo milyonaryo. Mr. Concepcion, milyonaryo. Mr.
Cruz.
Stop. Who authorized you? From where do you derive your authority to speak for the Filipino people? I mean, who authorized you? Who elected you?
It's a good point that we would seriously consider, and if the Batasan says all counts must stop, certainly we will abide by that.
If the Batasan says this, you will abide by it?
Certainly.
All right, we've got that on the record then. Thank you very much.
The controversy would rise to conflagration with the walkout on the night of February 9 by 38 computer technicians from the COMELEC Tabulation Center.
Linda, ano talaga meron talagang kalokohan, or words to that effect, no? Meron talagang kalokohan. Tapos sabi ko, bakit? Iba yung pinapalabas nila sa tally board, sa printout. Tapos sabi ko, are you sure? Kasi si Jules Lapitan, siya yung nag-generate kasi ng National Summary Report. Ako nag-generate yun Kaya once in a while, I casually glance, no? Yung compare. Hindi naman natin sa matter of policy, but parang napansin niya bakit biglang 3 million. Yung mga ganun ba? Tawag dito 2. Kung bug yan sa program, bakit region 2 and 3 or 1 and 2? Basta 2 regions lang ang naapektuhan. Kung may problema or kung may quirk talaga yung program, it should have been consistent for all regions. But 9 o'clock, biglang na-correct. Nag-match. 9 a.m. Sunday. So sabi nila, okay And then they noticed that there were foreign visitors. Tapos nagpa-generate ng copies of the printout, several copies. Kasi yun ang binigay, in-issue out sa foreign guests. So, tama nga naman. When you look at the printout and you compare it to the tally board, they match. After they left, after the foreigners left, iba na naman, mali na naman.
In the light of this smoking gun evidence, the head of the American Observer delegation would be clear if cautious in his departure statement.
We have spent the past 5 days in the Philippines observing the presidential election process. We have observed the passionate commitment of Filipinos to democracy, and we applaud that commitment. Sadly, however, we have witnessed and heard disturbing reports of efforts to undermine the integrity of the process, both during the voting and the vote counting process, which is still underway.
Confusion was now upon a nation ready to pound at the doorsteps of the state legislature, the Batasan Pambansa, another Marcos-controlled institution. Now the people would confront another monument to megalomania, a rubber stamp for a dictator's decrees, also the official canvassing body for electoral returns. The people wanted the Batasan to express their will.
Seen goons. And we asked the goons where they got the cards. They wouldn't tell us. They just told us from the boss,
Unable to get in, they gave the assemblymen a rousing welcome at the exit. Till the end of the official tabulation, the people would hope against hope that the pomp and circumstance would somehow find its way to telling the truth about what the nation really wanted. They wanted opposition assemblymen to be heard.
Concepcion, Cuenco.
Among the several spurious, fake, and manufactured certificates of canvas is the one covering the city of Danao, which is one of the component cities of Cebu province. The figures of the National Census and Statistics Office reveal that the actual population of Danao City, including newly born babies, is only 58,000. The KBLs were able to register as voters in Danao City 58,000 people, and 58,000 people voted for Marcos according to their tally. Only 230 voted for Cory Aquino.
Well, the election that was conducted in my province will be recorded in history as one of the dirtiest elections ever conducted.
With the formal start of canvassing, clear evidence of fraud would stare the Parliament in the face.
We would like to manifest, Mr. Speaker, that the certificate of canvass does not contain the required seal and that it is not folded in accordance with law.
Outside, there would be another vigil for truth, but truth was not forthcoming. Not from a Parliament whose very Speaker was also the ruling party's campaign coordinator.
The Speaker recommends that the Batasang Pambansa proclaim Ferdinand E. Marcos as the duly elected President of the Philippines and Arturo M. Tolentino as the duly elected Vice President of the Philippines.
Ronald Reagan, a personal friend to Marcos, was the last straw.
Concerned about the violence that was evident there and the possibility of fraud, although it could have been that all of that was occurring on both sides, but at the same time we're encouraged with the fact that it is evident that there is a two-party system in the Philippines and a pluralism that I think would benefit their people. And we're glad to see that particular thing happen, and we'll wait until we hear the outcome.
Long had the nation waited. Generously had it shed its blood, sadly listening to lies and guns denying the Philippines of its finest hour. Truly, this was the dirtiest and bloodiest elections in the nation's history. Now the Filipinos had finally learned that there was only one thing left to them: their unity. 9 days after the elections, they were marching again, answering Cory Aquino's call to a proclamation of the true victors, the Filipino people. With them once more were the bishops, now coming closer to their original prophetic role.
Kami, ang mga obispo, ay naniniwala na base sa aming pagtimbang bilang mga pastor, sa katatapos na halalan, maliwanag na ang sinikap sabihin ng mga mamamayan. Ang paraan ng pagdaraos ng halalan. Sa aming paghatol, matapos na timbangin ang mga bagay-bagay, ang pandaraya sa botohan ay walang katapat.
The people had kept the peace even in the most violent elections in Philippine history. Now, they were ready for more drastic measures.
I ask you to boycott 7 banks who have helped the usurper perpetuate his hold on power. I ask you to boycott San Miguel products.
What we are witnessing is an unedited, unique political experience. For the first time, after an electoral exercise, you have the massive participation of people in an effort to bring about the end of a dictatorship to a large democratic space through a militant, non-violent process. I do not know of any situation in the third world or in Latin America where such a massive outpouring of outrage and commitment conversion, courage, commitment has taken place after an electoral exercise that people wanted to see through to the end.
6 days after the call for a nationwide civil disobedience, history took a turn that jolted the nation when powerful voices suddenly spoke from an unexpected quarter. Within the military establishment.
The fact is that there was a report that we are going to be arrested, all of us, and if we are going to be arrested, we know what that means. And we have the members of the reform movement.
I am with Minister Enrile, and the reason for my being here, ladies and gentlemen, is that because the armed forces of the Philippines has ceased to be the real armed forces of the Philippines, which is supposed to be the defender of public safety and enforcer of the law.
There had been some anomalies committed during the election. And I searched my conscience and I felt that I could not serve a government that is not expressive of the sovereign will. As of now, I cannot in conscience recognize the President as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. And I am appealing to my brother members of the cabinet to heed the will of the people expressed during the last election, because in my own region I know that we cheated the election to the extent of 350,000 votes.
Minister Enrile and those with him have appealed for food and expressions of support. Those of you who wish to help should do so.
The people did not only heed the Cardinal's call, they also ended years of fear and hatred for the men in uniform.
What is happening is not a coup d'etat, but a revolution of the people.
Challenging the martial law machinery with their lives, the men of the reform movement, a mere 1,000 in the bloated numbers of the armed forces, had become one with their countrymen at a turning point in Philippine history. Marcos called it a conspiracy, producing witnesses whom he said had been ordered to attack and isolate him in Malacanang Palace in a coup d'etat. But if it was a coup, it had the blessings of the church and the Filipino people, a rebellion that became a moment of consecration.
We really would like to tell you that the prayers of the Catholic people are behind you. We've been praying for your safety at Mass this morning, and this whole day the people are praying for you. And we hope that nothing happens to you, and that through what you are doing, the Filipino people may be helped, may be saved from their very sad predicament.
The people converged on Manila's main highway in numbers that gradually swelled to the millions, forming a shield for Ramos and Enrile as they transferred their rebel headquarters to Camcrame across the street. The conquering strength of love and non-violence in full force now unified the throngs in what the world would call people power. This people power would be severely tested on the afternoon of Sunday, February 23, with the appearance of Marines ordered to cut through the crowds in tanks and attack the rebel headquarters in Camcrame. It was a direct encounter between weapons of war and weapons of peace. Quickly, the people set up a barricade of buses on the path of attack. They surrounded the tanks, imploring the Marcos loyalists to see it their way. Never before had the Filipino soldier engaged in a battle such as this. General Artemio Tadiar, commander of these forces, would find himself surrounded.
Let him think. Let us all think.
I am told to go to jail. While told to go to jail.
The trouble is between here and there.
You will provoke a battle.
No. There is a chance. There is a chance. There's a slight chance that maybe it will be in your contract for life.
No. You want to go there because you want to negotiate? I am not yet. I am not yet. I am not yet. Mrs. Quango will accompany you. I am not yet authorized by the president to negotiate. So can I? We are peaceful men. We never.
But your men don't look peaceful with all the guns.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, now and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
But this was war. And by Sunday morning, the Catholic station Radio Veritas, the only station broadcasting for the rebels, would be immobilized by Marcos forces, making a transfer necessary to a secret place they called DZRB, Radio Bandido, the new message center for the rebels in their most trying hours.
Yes?
Monday morning, February 24, began with an announcement over Radio Bandido that Marcos had fled with his family. This was relayed to the crowds at Camp Crame by a jubilant General Ramos. People rushed towards Malacanang Palace, eagerly destroying the barricades that kept them away through the Marcos years. The announcement had come too soon. Marcos was still very much around. He would later put on a show on television to prove it.
We have come here. We are sorry, Mr. President, but in the program, we just wanted to show you that we are still here and that we are strong and that organized and ready to neutralize any force. The Air Force is ready to mount an air attack We request the civilians to leave the vicinity of Camp Kramer immediately, Mr. President. That's why I come here in your orders, so we can immediately strike them. We have to mobilize the helicopters that they got. We have 2 fighter planes flying now to strike at any time. So with your order, sir,
my order is
please that all
not
civilians
to
leave the area.
attack. No, you hold on. Not to attack.
Sir, we are left with no option but to
yes.
do so.
Our
negotiations and our prior dialogues have not succeeded, Mr. President.
We may have to reach the point where we will employ heavy weapons, but you utilize small weapons in hand or shoulder weapons in the meantime. My order is to disperse
You
the
cannot
crowd
do all the time, Mr. President.
without shooting them. No, hold on. You disperse the crowd without shooting them. You may use any other weapon.
We will carry your order, sir.
Yes.
In a war where people power was the most crucial element, the urgency of informing the people of developments in the battlefield made the seizure of more media facilities necessary. Soon the rebels had not only Radio Bandido, but also the government's largest television station, Channel 4. More dramatic developments hovered over Camp Crame. Enrile and Ramos had feared an air attack. That Monday morning, these fears had turned to joy and confidence.
We had the elements of the 15th Strike Wing, composed of 5 helicopter gunship and 2 helicopter rescue helicopters, with 6 Toro fighter planes under Colonel Antonio Soteco. And this was followed by elements of the Air Reserve Division under Colonel Pablo Doble. There are about 12 officers and 40 enlisted personnel. We had the 5th Fighter Wing based in Basa that defected. And all along they thought that the jet planes that were flying were still under their control when they were already receiving instructions from us. We also have elements from the civil disturbance units of Villamor Air Base, who were supposed to go on civil disturbance against the people in front of us in Crame, and they joined up with our forces.
Minutes seem like hours as history unfolded. Everything happening all at once.
One distinctive quality of our revolution was the fiesta dimension. Maybe the people didn't know what really was happening, the middle class, and they came with their families and their children. Because those of us who are veterans, you would say, in mass action, we knew more or less what was happening. We were very, very tense. Maybe we were the only ones tense, and those who didn't know were not tense. But I know most of us were afraid of what might happen.
If you go there and get involved, you'll find out for yourself that, like, personally, I feel I've never been as proud of myself as a part of the Filipino nation.
I think everybody should take a stand.
Ngayon lang po ang pagkakataon. Ayan.
Gagawin ko rin. Napakasarap! Sobra na! Tama na! Palitan na!
There is a national emergency and I hereby proclaim it. I hereby announce a curfew nationwide from 6 o'clock in the evening to 6 o'clock in the morning.
Huwag ninyong susundin yung order na yan, sapagkat sa paningin ng bayan ay si Presidente Marcos ay hindi siya ang tunay na nahalal na presidente ng Pilipinas at wala siyang karapatan na mag-issue ng ganyang order. Titingnan natin kung kaya niyang ikulong ang milyong-milyong Pilipino na gustong makalaya. Kaya huwag ninyong susundin yan. Yang sinasabing curfew na yan, lumabas kayo sa bahay ninyo sapagkat itong bayan na ito ay bayan ng malalayang mamamayang Pilipino.
This is precisely what the people did. They fortified the road blockade and continued guarding Channel 4 and Radio Veritas from where they first heard of the revolt, stopping the Marcos tanks from attacking the rebels. few violent incidents that Monday night, tank might would not stop a people fighting for freedom. In reclaiming the streets of Manila, they also reclaimed a sovereign will silenced and thwarted by 20 years of dictatorship. As Malacanang readied itself for a Marcos inauguration, another presidential inauguration was taking place, secured by rebel air power and spilling crowds.
Preserve and defend its fundamental law.
Execute its just law.
Execute its just law.
Do justice to every man.
Do justice to every man.
And consecrate myself.
And consecrate myself.
To the service of the nation.
To the service of the nation.
So help me God.
So help me God.
President Aquino's first proclamation included the reappointment of Enrile and the promotion of Fidel Ramos.
Lieutenant General Fidel V. Ramos to full general and
simultaneously, rebel soldiers effected a mission order for the seizure of Channel 9, the carrying station of 2 other channels. This TV station was Marcos' last hold on airwaves he had totally controlled for 20 years. Marcos and Ver's forces swarmed the city, even as a rebel plane had already strafed the palace as a warning. Tanks rolled on the main thoroughfares of Manila, manned by soldiers fresh from the battlefields of counterinsurgency. They hardly knew what was going on as the people approached them, their fear overcome by concern. Soon, the tanks were retreating while Marcos' inauguration was underway in Malacanang.
Wherein the President of the Republic of the Philippines President Edwin Marcos will take us off.
No sooner had Marcos recited his oath of office than Channel 9 fell to the rebels, cutting him off the air abruptly. Only hours remained for the Marcos regime.
He cannot cow us anymore. We are no longer afraid to die because enough is enough, Mr. President. I think you know that your time is up.
Enrile and Ramos stood firm. The people stood firm. Together they had fought. Together they had prayed. Together they would break out in triumph at the news that came past 9 p.m.
That it is confirmed Mr. Marcos has left this country. I guess it seems like we waited for this forever. And it certainly took a long time coming. And there have been so many heroes, yes. And we've said this over and over again all these days.
Euphoria was upon the people as throngs poured out into the streets leading to the palace, while those who stayed indoors toasted the dictator's downfall. The celebration was marred only by victims of the crush of excitement to reclaim Malacanang Palace. And to stop Marcos' holdout from destroying documents.
Assure our land to the new president by not touching the palace. Do not steal anything from the palace.
The long nightmare of hatred had finally come to an end. Many believed that divine intervention through people power made it possible for the emblems of hope to wave again where fear and violence had reigned. One shining moment for Filipinos, a spark of peace for the world.
nagaganap sa aming bayan. Magkasama ng mahirap at mayaman, kapit, bisig, madre, pari at sundalo.
Naging langit itong bahagi ng mundo.
Huwag muling payagang